Guys, so for today's episode, I just want to very briefly talk about how my practice exam went today, because it was my first true sit down doing a practice exam for the FE exam that I have coming up. And honestly, I did a little worse than I was expecting. Not terrible. My goal was to get an 80% on the exam, which is higher than I technically need. The numbers I've heard is anywhere between 60 to 75%, is usually where the average score ends up. It depends on the test and the year and the group and all that, but most people say if you get over 70%, you're probably fine. I'm trying to aim for over 75%, which is why I'm making myself hit that limit of 80, because I know if I get 80%, I'm 99% going to be fine. Today's exam, I got a 90% on the first part, which was awesome, which the first part encompasses mostly the generic engineering knowledge, math and science and physics and material sciences, a little bit, things like that. But when it came to the second part, which is more the civil engineering focus section, there was a couple of sections that tripped me up a little more than I was expecting, which I guess makes sense because I didn't study them as heavily as the other sections, because I started to tail off with my studying. But specifically the fluid section gave me a lot of difficulty, so that's a section I'm going to look back and review. And then in general, all the civil section I think is worth another review for me throughout this week as much as I can. But I'm going to start with fluids for sure and see how I do with that. Overall, I ended up with I would say a 60%, 65 maybe percent on that second section, which averages out to roughly a 70-75%, which is right around that average range where I may or may not have been fine for the exam. But I want to bring that average up and make sure I'm confidently fine. And also, the lopsidedness of doing so well in the first half and not so great in the second half is a little worrisome, because I think technically if you do poor enough on certain sections, they could fail you even if your average is up to par. For example, let's say I got 100 on every section in the first half, but I did below average on all the sections in the second half, I'm pretty sure I would fail. So I want to even things out a bit, bring up my civil engineering knowledge a bit more to get that. My ideal would be that both sections I do 80% on or higher. For the first section, I'm more or less fine with that. I'll do a tiny bit of review for that maybe, but overall I'm feeling decent about it. The second half, I need to put in some serious work to get that up to an 80%, but even if I got it up to a 70-75%, I'd feel much more confident about it, assuming I maintain 80 to 90% in the first half. So yeah, the other thing about this was timing-wise, I did very, very well. First half of the exam took me an hour, 45 minutes, maybe 2 hours max, because I was at home and relaxed and things like that. But maybe 2 hours for the first half, and then I had up to 3 hours for the second half, and I finished most of it in about 2 hours. I had an hour to go back and look at things and really only utilize about half an hour at that time, which was great. That would be awesome on the real exam, because I could really, if I had to, I could have struggled through the second half of the exam and picked out problems here and there to do better on. But at the end of the day, until I get to the real exam, I don't know if I'm going to sit and work on a practice exam for the full 6 hours. 5 hours technically. The practice exam I'm using is 100 questions rather than 110, and that comes out to, I believe, 4 hours and 50 minutes, give or take. So I rounded down to 4 hours, 45 minutes, and spent an hour, 45 minutes on the first section, had up to 2 hours on the second section, I believe, and it worked out. Or I had 3 hours for the second section, my bad. But yeah, that's it for this video. I'm going to wrap it up here. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in tomorrow's episode.